Imagine waking up in a world where the air is thick with smoke from open fires, where water is something you fear more than thirst, and where a simple cold could mean your death. Welcome to the Middle Ages, a time romanticized in films and stories, but far harsher than most could ever endure. Tonight, as you close your eyes and let your mind drift through the cobbled streets and dark stone walls of a medieval village, I'll uncover just why you wouldn't last a single day in medieval times, and perhaps why those who did were some of the toughest people in human history. Before we begin, take a moment to get comfortable. If you enjoy these journeys through time, make sure to subscribe to History for Sleep, where every night history becomes your lullaby. Leave a comment below and tell us what part of history you'd like to drift away to next, and when you like to listen. Are you one who listens as you fall asleep, or do you let the stories play through the night? Now, settle in. The fires burn low, the village stirs in the distance, and the soft hum of a medieval dawn begins. As we journey through the sounds, smells, and struggles of this long-forgotten world, you'll soon understand why modern life, with all its noise and rush, may be far kinder than we think. Let's step back to a time when comfort was a luxury, pain was a companion, and survival was the greatest achievement of all. The first light of dawn creeps over the thatched rooftops of a small medieval village, a faint glow breaking through a veil of mist and wood smoke. The rooster's crow echoes over the fields, not as a cheerful greeting to the day, but as a reminder that sleep is over and the hard work begins. The morning is cold, even in summer. Your bed, if you could call it that, is a pile of straw covered with a thin wool blanket, scratchy and filled with small crawling things that bite. The air smells of animals, smoke, and damp earth. There is no comfort here. No soft pillow, no warm shower, no hot coffee. Only the promise of another long, grinding day. You rise before the sun fully wakes. The small window, little more than a hole covered with oiled cloth, lets in a dim light that paints the inside of your cottage in shades of gray. Around you, your family stirs. Everyone sleeps in the same space, huddled close to keep warm. The fire in the hearth has burned low during the night, and the chill cuts through the room like a blade. You can see your breath as you move. You fumble for your rough linen tunic, still damp from yesterday's work, and pull it over your head. Your feet slip into wooden clogs, worn smooth by years of walking over dirt and stone. Outside, the world is waking slowly. The fields stretch beyond the village, dark with dew and shadow. The church bell tolls faintly in the distance, calling the villagers to morning prayer. Life in this world revolves around two unshakable pillars, labor and faith. Every day begins the same way, with cold, hunger, and a whispered hope that today will not bring illness, injury, or punishment. You make your way toward the small bucket by the door, filled with water fetched yesterday from the village well. The surface is coated with a thin film of dirt. You take a sip anyway. The taste is earthy, slightly sour, and the thought crosses your mind that it might make you sick. But there's no other choice. Breakfast is meager. A crust of bread as hard as stone, softened in that same water, or a bit of thin ale. Sometimes, if you're lucky, a small piece of cheese or an onion. You eat in silence, because talking wastes time and energy. The fire crackles weakly, the smoke seeping through cracks in the roof beams. It stings your eyes, but the warmth is worth the burn. The children whimper softly as they wake, hungry and cold. Their faces are pale, their hands calloused, though they are still young. They will work today, too. Everyone must, from the smallest to the oldest. Stepping outside, you feel the dampness cling to your skin. The village smells of manure and smoke, of wet hay and old wood. Chickens scratch at the dirt. A dog barks somewhere far away. The sound of a hammer striking metal rings from the blacksmith's hut. Life begins early because daylight is precious and candles are costly. The sun is your only clock, and when it sets, the day ends, ready or not. You look to the horizon. The fields await, endless and merciless. The soil is heavy and stubborn. The tools are crude. Your back already aches from days before, but there is no time to rest. The Lord Steward rides through the village, his cloak whipping in the wind. His eyes sweep over the cottages, making sure every peasant is at work. His horse looks better fed than most of the villagers. You lower your head as he passes. To him, you are barely a person, more like an extension of the land, part of the property itself. You pay taxes in grain, in labor, and in obedience. And though you might dream of a better life, those dreams are dangerous. Disobedience can mean punishment, and punishment in these times is rarely mild. As the morning deepens, the sounds of toil fill the air. The rhythmic thud of hoes breaking the earth, the creak of wooden carts, the low murmur of prayer. You join in the work, hands raw from yesterday's blisters. Every swing of the tool sends a jolt of pain through your arms. The soil resists, clinging to the blade as if mocking your effort. Sweat mixes with dirt, turning your skin to mud. The sun climbs higher, burning away the mist, revealing a world that is both alive and weary. You pause for a moment, looking back toward the village. The smoke from the chimneys curls upward, thin and fragile against the sky. Somewhere, a baby cries. Somewhere else, someone coughs, a deep, rasping sound that doesn't stop. You wonder if they will survive the week. Life is fragile here. Death is always nearby, silent and patient. Yet, the people keep moving, keep working, because there is no other way. By mid-morning, you've already been awake for hours, your muscles screaming for rest. But rest is a luxury few can afford. The overseer watches, making sure no one stops for too long. Your thoughts drift toward the stories you've heard from travelers, tales of faraway lands, of shining cities, of kings and knights. You imagine what it would be like to live there, to have warm food and soft clothes. But those are dreams for other people, not for peasants bound to the soil. The sun climbs higher still, the light blinding and hot. The air grows heavy with the scent of grass and sweat. You can feel the hunger begin to gnaw at you again, but there's nothing more to eat until dusk. Around you, others work in silence, their faces set, their bodies bent like the wheat they tend. In this world, silence is survival. Words can bring trouble, and hope can break your heart. You wipe the sweat from your brow and keep digging, because the day has only just begun. And as you work, you realize, in this place, in this century, a single day feels like forever. The day moves forward, slow and unrelenting, as you find yourself swallowed by the rhythm of medieval life. The cold clings to you like a second skin, even when the sun begins to rise higher. It is not the kind of cold that fades once morning, settles in, it seeps deep into your bones, the result of thin clothes, damp walls, and endless wind. Every gust carries the sharp scent of mud, manure, and smoke. You might try to shake it off, rub warmth into your hands, but the chill is patient. It lingers, waiting for night to return when it will sink its teeth in once more. The ground beneath your feet is a cruel thing. Even in the best of seasons, the earth is uneven, thick with stones and roots. It sucks at your shoes, which are little more than leather scraps tied together with cord. Step wrong, and the mud swallows them whole. Most of your day is spent in the fields, bending low, your hands covered in dirt that never seems to wash away. You carry the soil under your nails, in your hair, even in your mouth from the dust that clings to the air. The dirt is everywhere, and in time, you stop noticing. Cleanliness isn't a goal here, it's a fantasy. If you lived in a small village, your home would be made from the same earth you work. Wattle and daub walls, packed with clay and straw, patched again and again as cracks appear with every rain. The floor is not made of wood or stone, but simply the ground itself, beaten flat by footsteps over the years. There are no rugs, no tiles, only straw thrown down to soak up the damp. Each night, the straw grows dirtier, moldier, alive with tiny creatures that bite at your skin while you sleep. When it becomes unbearable, you replace it with a new layer of straw, though the difference is hardly noticeable. If you're lucky enough to have a hearth, the smoke from the fire fills the air so thickly that your eyes water and your throat burns. There's no chimney, just a hole in the roof, and if the wind blows wrong, the smoke stays trapped inside. But you don't dare complain. Fire is life. It dries your clothes, cooks your food, and keeps death from creeping in through the night. Still, everything smells like smoke. Your hair, your clothes, the very air you breathe, it all carries the scent of burning wood and ash. When winter comes, the cold turns brutal. The walls feel thinner, and the wind howls through every gap and crack. Frost creeps across the inside of your window, a delicate pattern of ice that looks beautiful, until you realize it means your water bucket is frozen solid again. There's no insulation, no blankets thick enough to fight the chill. You sleep wrapped in whatever rags you can find, pressed close to family members or animals if you have them. Many keep their livestock indoors during the cold months, not for comfort, but survival. The body heat of goats and cows might mean the difference between life and death. The smell is unbearable at first then. Like everything else, you stop noticing. The dirt never leaves you. Even the wealthy are not free from it. Castles, for all their stone grandeur, are not the clean places that stories make them seem. The great halls are drafty and smoky, filled with the same smells of rot and sweat as any peasant home. The floors are strewn with rushes, straw, and herbs meant to absorb filth, but they quickly turn foul, soaked with spilled drink and scraps of food, crawling with fleas and mice. Servants sweep new rushes over the old, and the filth builds up layer by layer, hidden beneath fresh straw like secrets no one dares uncover. When it rains, the world becomes a sea of mud. The roads are little more than ruts carved into the earth, turning into thick, sucking sludge that traps carts and beasts alike. The water mixes with waste from the streets, and the smell becomes unbearable. Yet people keep walking through it, their legs splattered to the knee, their shoes ruined. It doesn't matter. There's nowhere dry to go anyway. Even indoors, the damp settles in, creeping up walls, rotting wood, and making your bones ache. Coughs spread quickly in this kind of air. They start small, then turn deep and rattling, and before long, someone is gone. People learn not to question it. In the villages, there are no baths, not like the kind you might imagine. Water is drawn from wells, heavy and cold, and saved for drinking or cooking when possible. Washing your body is a luxury few can afford. Some may rinse their faces in the morning or scrub their hands before a meal, but a full bath is rare. For many, it happens only a few times a year. Dirt becomes part of life, a second skin that never fully leaves. The smell of unwashed bodies, smoke, and livestock mixes into something constant, something that defines the air itself. And yet, amid all this filth and cold, people endure. Children laugh as they chase each other through the mud, their bare feet splashing through puddles. Women hang damp clothes by the fire, humming soft songs to calm crying babies. Men sharpen tools by the doorway, talking in low voices about the weather, the harvest, or the Lord's taxes. Life continues, simple and unyielding, even as the dirt seeps into every corner of existence. At midday, the sun fights through a thin layer of cloud, offering a brief moment of warmth. You pause for just a second, tilting your face toward it. The heat feels like a blessing, a memory of summer long gone. You take a deep breath, tasting the dust, the smoke, and the faint scent of grass. It isn't pleasant, but it is life. And in this world, that's enough. The moment passes quickly. Clouds roll in again, the light fades, and you return to your work. Your hands are numb, your clothes stiff with mud, and your stomach empty. But you keep moving, one slow step after another, because to stop would mean to fall behind. In the distance, the church bell rings again, marking another hour lost to labor. You look at the sky, gray and endless, and realize the day is far from over. In medieval times, the cold and the dirt were not things you escaped. They were things you lived with, every hour of every day. They shaped your body, your mind, and your soul. And as night draws near, the chill deepens once more, reminding you that here, in this world of earth and smoke, comfort is something only found in dreams. By the time the sun has climbed fully above the horizon, your stomach aches with hunger. The morning's work has already begun to take its toll, and all you've eaten is a chunk of hard bread, soaked in stale ale or thin water to soften it. There is no such thing as a quick, hearty breakfast in this world. The idea of eggs sizzling on a pan, of hot porridge sweetened with honey, or even a cup of warm drink, those are luxuries reserved for kings, monks, and lords. For you, breakfast is simply fuel, something to quiet the gnawing emptiness in your belly long enough to keep working. You sit for a moment on the edge of a low stone wall near the fields. The air is crisp, heavy with the smell of damp earth and wood smoke from nearby cottages. Around you, others eat much the same thing, bread so tough it could break a tooth. Perhaps a small wedge of cheese if someone has been paid for their labor. Some sip weak ale from wooden cups, a safer option than the water drawn from the well, which often carries disease. You chew slowly, your jaw aching, your mind already turning toward the day's tasks. Hunger, after all, is not something that ever really leaves in this time. It lingers, always just behind you, waiting. If you were to walk through a medieval village in the early hours, you'd find a world quietly alive with the struggle for food. The baker's oven glows in the dim morning, its heat spilling into the cool air. He rises long before dawn to knead dough by hand, his arms coated in flour, his face streaked with soot. The bread he makes will feed the entire community, peasants, priests, even the Lord's household. But bread is not cheap. The cost of flour, the taxes on grain, and the Lord's share all mean that most people must make do with coarse loaves baked from barley or rye, dark and heavy, sometimes mixed with ground-up beans or peas to stretch the dough further. Wheat, soft and golden, is a rarity for the poor. Its sweetness is a dream, something you might taste only once or twice in a lifetime. For the lower classes, breakfast is rarely fresh. Leftovers from the night before are eaten cold, perhaps a stew thickened with grains or vegetables if you're fortunate. More often, there's nothing to reheat. Firewood is too precious to waste on warming a meal when it is needed for cooking later or keeping the house from freezing. So you eat what's there, in silence, surrounded by the sound of others doing the same crunching, swallowing, breathing heavily through noses still clogged from the smoke of the night fire. Inside your small cottage, the smell of smoke never fades. It mixes with the earthy scent of bread, of straw, and the faint sweetness of ale. Children sit cross-legged on the floor, gnawing at small pieces of crust. The youngest may cry, their faces smeared with dirt, their eyes wide and tired. Mothers hush them softly, knowing there's nothing more to give. Every bite is precious, every crumb saved. To waste food is a sin, not just against God, but against survival itself. If you lived in a town, things might look different, but only slightly. The morning markets begin to stir as merchants pull open the shutters of their stalls. The smell of fresh bread, roasted meat, and onions fills the narrow streets, mixing with the stench of refuse and sewage that runs down the gutters. The wealthier townsfolk can afford something more satisfying, a thick porridge made with oats and milk, or maybe a small piece of salted pork. But even they live within limits. Food spoils quickly, and winter always threatens to return hunger to the door. For the poor, breakfast might depend entirely on luck. A kind baker might hand out old bread from the day before. A local monastery might serve thin soup to the hungry, though the line would be long, and not everyone would get a share. Others might scavenge, picking through the refuse of wealthier homes, looking for anything edible. Hunger drives dignity away, and shame becomes a luxury few can afford. If you were a farmer, you might eat before dawn and again at noon, but the meals are nearly identical: bread, ale, and perhaps a small portion of pottage, a thick stew of whatever vegetables you can find. Cabbage, leeks, onions, and turnips form the base of most meals. Meat, when it appears, is rare and precious. A chicken might be slaughtered only for a festival or a wedding, and even then, every part is used. The bones are boiled for broth, the organs cooked for pies, the fat saved for candles. Nothing is wasted. Hunger teaches you not to. As you finish your small breakfast, your stomach still feels hollow. The bread sits like a stone in your belly, but it offers little strength. The fields call again. You stand, brushing crumbs from your tunic, and pick up your tools. The sound of others doing the same surrounds you, a collective sigh, as the village returns to its labor. There's no time for comfort, no hour to linger. The day must be earned with sweat and endurance, and food, however poor, is just another part of the struggle. You look toward the manor in the distance. Smoke rises from its chimneys, and you imagine the meal being served within. Freshly baked bread made from white flour, soft butter, salted meat, maybe even wine to wash it down. The lord and his family sit on benches by the fire, their hands clean, their clothes fine. They eat slowly, speaking quietly of matters you'll never understand. For them, breakfast is not a struggle, it's a ritual of privilege. The contrast is sharp, but you've long learned not to dwell on it. In this world, envy is useless. It only makes hunger burn hotter. The sun rises higher, and the day begins to warm, but your body still aches from the cold. The emptiness in your stomach becomes a dull companion, one you'll carry until evening. You try to ignore it, focusing on the rhythm of your work, the soft hum of voices, the clatter of tools. Life in medieval times is not a life of plenty. It is a constant negotiation with scarcity. Every meal is a reminder of how close you live to the edge. By midday, your thoughts drift again toward food. The smell of baking bread from the village below tempts you, but you know none of it will reach you today. Perhaps tomorrow, or perhaps not at all. Hunger, here, is not a momentary discomfort. It is the thread that binds every life together. It humbles, it drives, and it never truly fades. The struggle for breakfast is not just about eating, it is about surviving another day in a world that gives so little and takes so much. And as the church bell tolls again in the distance, calling for prayer, you bow your head, not in worship, but in quiet endurance. The day has barely begun, and already you dream of bread that's soft, of milk that's warm, and of a morning where hunger does not wake with you. As the day drifts forward and the work in the fields continues, you sometimes find yourself traveling into the nearby village or town. The closer you get to the heart of it, the stronger the smell becomes. It starts faintly, like damp earth mixed with smoke, but soon grows overwhelming, filling your nose and clinging to your clothes. The medieval street is alive with odors, each one telling its own story of life, decay, and survival. The scent of humanity, unwashed and crowded together, is everywhere. There is no escaping it. The stench of the streets is as much a part of this world as the church bell or the sound of the blacksmith's hammer. The road beneath your feet is not paved with stone or clean gravel. It's dirt mixed with straw and filth, churned into thick mud by countless feet, hooves, and cartwheels. Rainwater pools in ruts, turning the street into a shallow river of gray-brown sludge. Into this river goes everything: waste from chamber pots, scraps of food, animal dung, and even the remains of dead creatures. Rats scurry between puddles, their slick bodies darting beneath carts and around barrels. Flies gather in clouds around the refuse, and the buzzing never truly stops. The smell is heavy, like rot and sour milk, and no matter how long you've lived in it, you never fully get used to it. The people here move through it all as if it's normal, because it is. A woman dumps a bucket of dirty water from her doorway, and it splashes onto the street below, adding another layer to the stinking stew. A butcher, his apron stained with blood, stands outside his stall, swatting flies away from hanging cuts of meat. The air smells sharp and metallic near him. A few stalls down, a tanner scrapes hides clean of flesh and fat, soaking them in vats of foul liquid to prepare the leather. The odor that rises from those vats could make you gag. It's said that tanners can be smelled before they're seen, and no one argues with that. Further down the road, a group of pigs roots through the rubbish, snorting and squealing as they dig for scraps. They are part of the town's living waste system, eating what people throw away. Chickens wander freely, pecking at the mud, and dogs prowl near the taverns, waiting for bones to be tossed their way. Everywhere you look, life and filth are tangled together. The same hand that bakes your bread also empties its waste into the gutter. The same water that runs through the street may be fetched later, clear on the surface, but deadly beneath. In wealthier parts of town, the streets are no cleaner, only better hidden. Stone houses replace wooden huts, but waste still runs in channels along the edges, trickling toward the river. Servants pour out chamber pots from upper windows, calling out a warning before the contents splash onto the ground, or sometimes onto an unlucky passerby. Gardy-loo! They shout in some cities, but the word comes too late. You learn to walk close to the walls and to never look up when the shutters creak open above you. The stench is worst in summer. Heat makes the air thick, pressing down like a blanket. The smell of rot intensifies, rising from every alley and doorway. Meat spoils faster, fish brought in from the coast turn sour by midday, and the bodies of dead animals bake in the sun before they can be cleared away. Even the perfume of flowers or herbs can't mask it for long. People wear pouches of dried lavender, rosemary, or mint around their necks to block the smell, but it only dulls it. The stink of the medieval street seeps into everything: your hair, your clothes, your breath. When it rains, the filth turns liquid, running downhill in small, foul rivers. Shoes sink into the muck, splattering it onto your legs and tunic. You can smell the latrines even from a distance, the pits dug behind homes or inns, overflowing and festering. Flies swarm in black clouds above them, and the buzz blends into the drone of the village. In many towns, there's no real system for waste removal. The people simply dig new pits or dump the contents into the street at night. It's no wonder disease spreads so easily here. One careless spill can poison the well or the stream, and no one will notice until it's too late. And yet, among the stench and filth, life continues. Children play in the mud, chasing each other through puddles, laughing as though they can't smell it at all. Merchants shout their prices, waving hands stained with fish oil or blood. The church bell rings again, its clear sound rising above the chaos, a reminder of faith amid the filth. Somewhere, a minstrel sings near the tavern, his voice rough but bright, trying to bring a moment of cheer to those passing by. You can almost forget the smell for a heartbeat, but only for that moment. At night, when the torches are lit and the streets darken, the smell becomes heavier still. The day's heat fades, but the rot remains. People empty their waste buckets once more before sleeping, and the air fills with the same sour scent. Stray dogs fight over scraps, their growls echoing through the narrow lanes. A drunk stumbles out of a tavern, slips in the mud, curses, and disappears into the darkness. The sound of the river carries faintly through the night, the same river where people wash clothes, draw drinking water, and dump refuse. It's a place of life and death all at once. If you were to walk through these streets in the dark, You would feel the world close in around you, the stifling air, the slick ground beneath your feet, the hum of insects, and the distant murmur of prayer. You'd smell everything that defines the medieval world: the sweat of labor, the rot of waste, the smoke of fire, and the faint sweetness of ale brewing in the taverns. It's a symphony of survival, both grotesque and human. And somehow, people grow used to it, finding normalcy in the unbearable. By morning, the cycle begins again. The streets are swept half-heartedly, the fires are relit, and new waste is thrown onto old. The air never truly clears. It clings to you long after you leave, the smell of the Middle Ages, a mixture of sweat, dirt, death, and life. It's the scent of a time before sanitation, before understanding, when existence itself carried a price that could be smelled long before it was seen. And as you walk through the rising dawn, breathing in the thick air of the medieval street, you realize that this is not a world meant for comfort. It is a world that demands endurance, a world where every breath reminds you that survival comes at the cost of cleanliness, and that in these streets, the stench is simply part of being alive. The day never truly begins or ends in the medieval world. It only shifts from one form of labor to another. From the moment the faint light of dawn touches the fields until the last traces of daylight fade behind the trees, work fills every waking hour. It is not just a routine, it is survival. To stop working is to invite hunger, punishment, or worse. The rhythm of life is measured not by clocks or schedules, but by the rising and setting of the sun, by the tolling of church bells, and by the ache in your body that never really goes away. If you are a peasant, you rise before the rooster crows, often after sleeping only a few hours. Your first thoughts are not of comfort, but of duty, because the land demands constant attention. You grab your tools, dull and worn from years of use, and head toward the fields. There is no choice, no break, no real rest. You belong to the soil, and the soil owns you in return. The lord of the manor may own the land, but it's your sweat that feeds it. You work not only for yourself, but for him, giving a portion of every harvest, every loaf, every life to those above you. The fields stretch endlessly, row upon row of heavy earth that must be tilled, planted, weeded, and harvested by hand. The tools are simple: a wooden plow, a hoe, a sickle. The plow is pulled by oxen, slow and stubborn creatures, and you guide it through the soil, your arms trembling from the strain. The work is backbreaking, and the sun beats down on your neck, burning the skin until it blisters. Your hands are cracked and calloused, hardened from years of gripping rough wood and stone. The air hums with the sound of effort, the scrape of metal on soil, the rustle of grain in the wind, the distant voices of others who toil beside you. There are no days off, no weekends, no vacations. Only the holy days of the church bring rest, and even then, much of the day is spent in prayer or ritual rather than true leisure. Rain or shine, you labor. If you fall ill, someone else must take your place, or the work goes undone. And in this world, work left undone is disaster. Crops die, animals starve, and the village suffers. You learn to push through the pain, to keep moving even when every muscle protests. Fatigue becomes a part of you, an invisible weight carried as naturally as your shadow. If you are a woman, your workload is no lighter. You rise with the men, perhaps even earlier, tending to the hearth before dawn. You bake the bread, milk the goats or cows, feed the chickens, and care for the children all before breakfast. Then you head to the fields or the gardens, working the soil alongside your husband. In the evening, when others rest, you still labor spinning wool, weaving cloth, mending clothes by the dim light of the fire. The sound of your spindle spinning is the heartbeat of the home. There is no part of your day untouched by duty. Children, too, work as soon as they are able to walk and carry. They scare birds from the fields, fetch water, gather firewood, and tend the animals. Play exists, but it is fleeting, a stolen moment between chores. Childhood, as we understand it now, does not exist here. You grow up fast because life demands it. Every pair of hands, no matter how small, is needed to keep the household alive. The Lord's steward rides through the fields, ensuring that every man and woman is doing their share. He carries a whip not as decoration, but as a tool of authority. Should someone be found idling, punishment is swift. The church preaches that work is holy, that labor is a form of worship. Laziness is sin, and sin brings ruin. You internalize this truth, repeating it quietly as you labor. To work is to live. To rest is to risk everything. As the sun climbs higher, sweat soaks your tunic, and the soil clings to your skin. You pause only long enough to drink a mouthful of warm ale or water, perhaps eat a small piece of bread if you have it. Then it's back to work. The day drags on, the hours indistinguishable, a blur of effort and exhaustion. The sound of your heartbeat seems to merge with the rhythm of your labor. You feel your body ache, your vision blur, but you continue. Everyone does. There is no choice. In towns and cities, the rhythm is different, but no easier. Craftsmen and merchants rise early to open their shops, working long into the night by the light of flickering candles. Blacksmiths hammer at glowing metal, their arms trembling with each strike. Bakers work through the dark hours before dawn, their ovens blazing with heat. Tanners, dyers, and cobblers labor in workshops that smell of chemicals and rot. Apprentices scurry between tasks, learning their trade under harsh masters who expect perfection. The sounds of industry fill the streets: hammers, saws, the crackle of fire, the cries of merchants calling to passers-by. Even monks, who dedicate their lives to God, are not spared from work. In the monastery, the day is divided into hours of prayer, study, and labor. They tend gardens, copy manuscripts, brew ale, or care for the sick. Their lives seem peaceful from the outside, but they too follow a strict, endless routine, governed by bells that ring through the day and night. Work is the constant rhythm that defines existence. When evening comes, you return home, your body heavy, your mind dull with fatigue. You eat what little there is, often cold or simple stew, bread or porridge, and sit in silence by the fire. Conversation is rare. Words feel heavy after a day of labor. The only sounds are the crackling of wood and the occasional sigh from those beside you. The children may already be asleep, curled up on straw mats, their faces smudged with soot. You feel your own eyes droop, but even as sleep takes you, your body remains tense, your hands curled as if still gripping the day's work. And before you know it, the rooster will call again, and another day will begin just the same. In this world, rest is a dream and work is the only reality. It shapes your body, your soul, and your understanding of existence. There is no escaping it, no rebellion against it. The medieval world is a world built on labor, on the strength of those who never stop moving, who endure quietly beneath the weight of centuries. The endless workload is the heartbeat of this time, steady and merciless, carrying life forward one aching day at a time. In the medieval world, death is never far away. It lurks in every corner, in every cough, every wound, every shared cup of ale. Disease is not something rare or mysterious. It is a constant companion. People live surrounded by sickness, and few expect to grow old. To fall ill is almost ordinary, and to recover is a small miracle. In a time without real doctors, without understanding of germs or hygiene, desperation fills the air as thickly as the smell of smoke. It begins with a cough, deep, rattling, painful. At first, you think it is just the chill from the night air or the damp straw where you sleep. You keep working, ignoring the ache in your chest, because there's no choice. But soon the fever comes. Your skin burns while your body shivers. The world spins, and the simple act of standing becomes an effort. You try to rest, but your bed is cold, your blanket thin, and the sounds of work outside never stop. Illness gives no one an escape from labor. If you can move, you work. If you cannot, you hope someone else picks up your share, though they may resent it. Common diseases sweep through villages like wildfire. Typhus, dysentery, tuberculosis, and influenza are constant threats. A single well can poison an entire community, spreading invisible death through every household. Children die young, their small bodies unable to endure the fever or the hunger that follows it. Mothers grieve quietly, because grief is a familiar shadow here. Cemeteries grow quickly, marked with simple wooden crosses that rot away before the next generation arrives. Then there are the great plagues, the ones whispered about in terror. The Black Death, when it came, did not just take lives. It erased entire villages. One day, you hear rumors from the next town over. Strange swellings, fevers that kill within days, families vanishing overnight. People flee, carrying the disease with them. The bells toll endlessly. The priests speak of punishment and sin, and the smell of death hangs over everything. It's said that the air itself turns bad, that death travels on the wind. You hold herbs or flowers to your nose, hoping to keep the sickness away, but it never truly works. If you are sick, your first hope is prayer. The Church teaches that illness is either a test from God or punishment for sin. Priests bless you, sprinkle holy water, or read from Scripture as your family kneels beside you. The candlelight flickers over their faces, pale from fear and exhaustion. Medicine exists, but it is a mix of guesswork and faith. A village healer might offer herbs or poultices made from moss and vinegar. They might bleed you, believing the sickness lies in your blood. The physician, if you are lucky enough to see one, might carry a bag of leeches or powders, each cure more painful than the disease itself. Sometimes they prescribe ground bones or crushed pearls, mixtures that do little but drain the family's meager coins. Hospitals, where they exist, are not places of healing but of waiting. Beds are narrow, straw-filled, and shared by multiple patients. The air is heavy with the smell of infection. Nurses, often monks or nuns, move between the dying, offering comfort more than medicine. The prayers are endless, the groans constant. Outside, carts carry away the dead, wrapped in cloth or straw, their names often forgotten before the burial is done. Even small injuries can mean death. A cut on the hand from a farming tool might fester, swelling and darkening until the pain becomes unbearable. Infection spreads quickly. There are no antiseptics, no clean bandages. A simple splinter could lead to fever, delirium, and death. People live with scars, limps, missing fingers, all reminders of a world without healing. The body is both strong and fragile, built to endure but always one step away from ruin. And yet, life continues. People find ways to adapt to the constant threat of illness. They cling to rituals, to faith, to small comforts. A mother ties a charm around her child's neck, believing it will keep away the fever. A farmer spits on the ground before entering his field, warding off bad luck. A priest burns incense in the chapel, filling the air with sweet smoke to drive out evil spirits. Everyone believes in something, because to live without belief in this world is to drown in fear. When sickness strikes, communities often isolate the sick. In towns, entire streets are shut off. Families nail boards over their doors, marking them with symbols to warn others. No one enters, and no one leaves. The healthy whisper prayers as they pass, eyes averted. The smell of rot and sickness leaks through the cracks, a reminder of what waits behind those walls. When the time comes, the dead are buried quickly, sometimes burned, their possessions destroyed to stop the spread. But the disease always finds a way. Desperation breeds superstition. Some believe the sick are cursed, or that witches have brought the plague through dark magic. Women with healing skills or strange herbs are accused of sorcery, dragged before frightened crowds, and punished to calm the fear of others. Reason is rare in times of terror, and fear is a weapon sharper than any blade. People look for someone to blame, because it's easier than facing the truth that death is everywhere, and no one truly understands it. At night, when the coughing grows louder and the cries of pain echo through the village, you lie awake, listening. The fire burns low, casting long shadows across the walls. You think of those you've lost, of the ones still fighting. You wonder if the sickness will come for you next. There is no real protection, no cure, only endurance. You pull the blanket tighter around you, though it does little to warm your bones, and you whisper a prayer, not for health, but for mercy. When dawn comes, the village is quieter. Someone is missing. The cart will come again, and another name will fade into silence. But the fields still need tending, the bread must still be baked, and life, in its grim persistence, moves forward. People cough, spit, wipe sweat from their foreheads, and continue, because they must. Disease may ravage the body, but the will to live keeps the world turning. In the medieval world, health is never a guarantee. Every breath feels borrowed, every heartbeat a gift. Desperation is not a moment, it is a way of life. And in that desperation lies both tragedy and an impossible strength. For even as death walks beside them, the people of this time keep living, keep working, and keep believing that somehow tomorrow might come. In the medieval world, life is not merely divided by wealth or luck. It is carved into layers so deep that few ever cross between them. Class is not a matter of choice, but of birth. Where you are born determines nearly everything. The food you eat, the work you do, the way you speak, even how you die. The divide between lord and peasant is vast, and for most, unbridgeable. It is a world where privilege and poverty live side by side, yet never touch. If you are a peasant, you live your life beneath the weight of the manor and the church. The Lord owns the land, the forests, the rivers, and even the rights to hunt or fish. You are tied to that land as surely as the roots of the crops you tend. Your freedom is limited, your choices few. You owe the Lord your labor, your taxes, and your obedience. In return, he offers protection, though what that truly means depends on his mood and his ambition. You might work his fields for several days each week, giving a portion of your harvest to his storehouses. Even the bread you bake and the ale you brew are subject to his claim. And if war comes, you will fight for him, or your sons will. The manor rises above the village like a constant reminder of your place in the world. Its stone walls glint in the sunlight, while your own cottage leans against the wind. Inside those walls, life is easier, though not as clean or comfortable as you might imagine. The Lord and his family eat from wooden or pewter plates instead of rough clay. They wear wool dyed in bright colors, and sometimes silk brought from distant lands. Their tables hold meat pork, beef, venison, and spiced wine. Servants pour their drinks and tend the fires. Yet even within those halls, hierarchy rules. The Lord's servants sleep on floors or benches, rising before dawn to prepare for their master's day. The line between privilege and servitude exists even inside luxury. For peasants, the Lord is both ruler and law. His word determines what is fair, what is owed, and who is punished. A man caught hunting on his land without permission may lose his hand or worse. A family unable to pay their taxes may lose their fields. To question authority is to invite ruin. You live with your head bowed, your voice soft, always careful not to draw unwanted attention. Justice is not blind here, it looks upward, never down. The church, too, stands as a towering force in this hierarchy. The priest may be poor compared to the Lord, but his influence is immense. He speaks for God, And in a world ruled by fear and faith, that power is unmatched. Peasants confess their sins to him, seeking forgiveness for thoughts of envy or despair, while the wealthy purchase indulgences and donations to cleanse their souls. Salvation, like everything else, seems easier for those who can afford it. Still, the Church offers comfort to the desperate. It teaches that all suffering has purpose, that obedience and humility are holy, and that rewards await in the afterlife. For the poor, heaven is not a hope, it is the only escape. In towns and cities, class takes on new forms but remains just as cruel. Merchants, craftsmen, and traders form a growing middle class, though they still live beneath the nobility. Guilds control who may work in certain trades, and apprentices spend years laboring for masters before they can earn their own place. Above them are the wealthy burghers, their homes tall and sturdy, their children educated and well-dressed. Below them are the laborers and beggars, living day to day, often in the shadows of prosperity they will never taste. For women, the divide is doubled. A noble woman might live in comfort, but her life is not her own. She is a tool of alliance, her marriage arranged to strengthen the family's power. Her days are filled with prayer, embroidery, and supervision of servants. Yet her future is determined by men her father, her husband, her sons. A peasant woman, meanwhile, works endlessly. She tills fields, carries water, tends to children, and spins wool late into the night. Her hands are raw, her back bent, her body weary from childbirth and toil. Yet even she is told to be grateful, to serve humbly, to obey both her husband and her Lord. The world teaches her that she is lucky to have survived another day. On feast days, the differences between classes are on full display. The Lord hosts a banquet in his hall, with roasted meats, pies filled with spices, and goblets of wine. Laughter echoes off stone walls as music fills the air. Down in the village, the peasants celebrate with simple stew and rough bread, drinking ale from shared mugs. They dance barefoot on the dirt, their joy raw and fleeting. From the manor's windows, the Lord might watch them with mild amusement, perhaps even toss down a coin or two. But he will never truly understand their hunger, just as they will never taste his wine. The cruelty of the divide is not always in open violence. It is in the quiet hopelessness of knowing you will never rise above where you were born. A peasant's son will be a peasant. A servant's daughter will serve. The rare few who escape their class do so through luck or through the Church, which sometimes takes the clever and the devout into its ranks. Yet even there, ambition is limited. A peasant monk may spend his life in silence, copying words he cannot read, while bishops and abbots dine in comfort. Still, people endure. They laugh, they marry, they sing songs of love and labor. They find small freedoms in the spaces between duty. A stolen afternoon by the river, a shared loaf between friends, a whispered story of a better life. Hope survives even in chains. The poor may dream of a day when the Lord's table is overturned, when justice finds its way to the fields. But those are dreams best kept quiet. Hope, like bread, is precious and easily taken away. When night falls, the lights of the manor glow faintly on the hill, while the village lies in darkness below. The wind carries the faint sound of laughter from the Lord's hall, mingling with the crackle of peasant fires. Two worlds exist side by side, bound together yet forever apart. The land feeds the rich, the poor tend the land, and the cycle continues, century after century. The brutality of class in the medieval world is not just in the hunger or the hardship, it is in the acceptance of it. People are taught from birth that the world is as God wills it, that to question their place is to question heaven itself. And so they bow their heads, not because they believe it fair, but because it is all they have ever known. If you were to step into the medieval world, the first thing you would notice after the stench is how little people truly wash. Cleanliness, as we understand it today, does not exist. Bathing is not a daily habit or even a weekly one. It's a rare event, often reserved for special occasions or times of illness. The idea of scrubbing your body from head to toe with clean water and soap would seem strange, even wasteful. Water is precious, and more often than not, unsafe. Most people live their entire lives with dirt embedded into their skin, their hair stiff with grease, and their clothes carrying the scent of sweat, smoke, and age. The medieval person wakes surrounded by grime that never fully leaves. The air inside the home is thick with smoke from the hearth, which coats every surface in a fine layer of soot. The straw on the floor, used to soak up dirt and waste, becomes filthy within days. Lice and fleas live in the bedding, crawling into your clothes and biting at your skin as you sleep. It is not a matter of laziness. It is simply life. Everyone carries the same marks of poverty and exposure. The rich may smell sweeter, but even their perfume cannot fully mask the truth beneath. Bathhouses do exist, though not everywhere. In towns and cities, public baths can be found near rivers or wells. For a few coins, men and women can soak in large wooden tubs filled with heated water. But these places are not what you might imagine. They are crowded, noisy, and far from clean. The same water is used for dozens of people, sometimes for hours on end. The heat turns the air heavy with steam and sweat. Barbers set up shop nearby, offering to trim hair, shave beards, or lance boils while customers wait. There's laughter and gossip, but also risk. Disease spreads easily here, carried through the warm, murky water. When plague and sickness sweep through the land, the baths empty, and fear replaces comfort. In smaller villages, bathing is even rarer. A family might fill a wooden tub once a month, usually in winter when the smoke from the fire can keep the chill away. The order of bathing often depends on status within the household, the father first, then the mother, followed by the children in turn. By the time the youngest steps in, the water is cloudy and cold. Soap, when it exists, is harsh and made from animal fat and lye. It scrubs away dirt, but leaves the skin raw. Many rely on ashes or sand instead, rubbing themselves down with whatever is at hand. More often, they simply wash their hands and faces and call it enough. Hair is rarely cut short, especially for women, but it is far from clean. Lice are a common part of life, and people use small metal combs to scrape through their hair, often by candlelight. Some smear it with vinegar or oil in an attempt to kill the insects, while others simply learn to live with the constant itching. Beards are trimmed occasionally, but shaving requires skill and sharp tools, both of which are scarce. Men might visit the local barber, whose shop smells of iron and soap, to have their faces scraped clean with a blade that has already touched a dozen others that day. Cuts and infections are common, yet few complain. It's just another risk of being alive. Teeth fare no better. There are no toothbrushes, no minty pastes. People clean their mouths by rubbing them with cloth, or sometimes with twigs chewed until frayed. Salt, ashes, and herbs are used as makeshift powders, but decay is inevitable. Toothache is a constant torment, and when the pain becomes unbearable, the only cure is extraction. There are no numbing agents, no comfort, just the rough hands of a local barber or healer gripping a pair of iron tongs. The sound of a tooth being torn from the mouth echoes through the small room, followed by a scream and then silence. The wound may heal, or it may fester. Either way, life goes on. Clothing, too, is rarely washed. Most peasants own only one or two sets of garments, one for daily labor and one slightly better for holy days or festivals. Washing clothes requires water, soap, and time, none of which are easy to spare. Instead, clothes are beaten with sticks or rinsed in streams, then hung to dry on hedges or branches. The fabric stiffens as it dries, rough against the skin. In winter, washing is nearly impossible, and people simply wear their garments until they fall apart. The smell becomes part of them, indistinguishable from the scent of the world around them. Even in castles, where luxury is at its highest, hygiene is still primitive. The wealthy may have servants pour water over their hands before meals, but full baths are rare. Perfumes and powders cover the scent of sweat, and clean linens are a sign of wealth, not true cleanliness. The nobles sit on padded chairs and wear silk, but beneath it all, they share the same fleas as their servants. The difference lies only in how well they can hide it. Their homes have garderobes, small chambers built into the walls where waste drops into pits or moats below, but the smell often lingers, drifting through the halls despite perfumed candles burning day and night. Waste disposal is a challenge for everyone. Chamber pots are kept beneath beds, emptied into the street or river each morning. The gutters carry the filth away, but never far enough. In towns, the smell of waste mingles with that of food, smoke, and the sweat of hundreds of bodies. People sprinkle herbs on floors or hang bundles of flowers from rafters to fight the stench. The church burns incense during services, not only for devotion, but to mask the smell of the congregation. And yet, the medieval person does not think of themselves as filthy. Dirt is part of life, a badge of labor and endurance. Cleanliness is not moral purity, as it would be in later centuries, but a passing state useful but unnecessary. To be covered in earth means you have worked. To smell of sweat means you have lived. Even those who long for cleanliness see it as something fleeting, a moment of relief rather than a way of life. Still, the few times you do wash are unforgettable. When you lower yourself into warm water after weeks of grime, it feels like being reborn. The heat soothes the aching muscles. The dirt drifts away, and for a short while, you feel light again, as if the weight of the world has lifted. You close your eyes and imagine that the scent of the herbs in the water will linger, that maybe the dirt won't return so quickly, but you know it will. Tomorrow, you'll wake again to the same smoke, the same soil, the same stains of life that no washing can truly remove. In the medieval world, hygiene is not about vanity, it's about endurance. The dirt becomes part of you, as much a part of your story as the calluses on your hands or the ache in your back. To live in this time is to carry the world with you, on your skin and in your breath, every single day. In the medieval world, getting sick or injured is terrifying, but what comes next is often worse. Medicine is not science yet. It is faith, tradition, and guesswork bound together by superstition. Doctors, if you can find one, are not healers in the modern sense. They are learned men who study ancient texts more than human bodies, who quote Aristotle and Galen rather than test their ideas. Most people never see one. They rely on village healers, midwives, and monks who do what they can with herbs, hot irons, and prayer. But when pain strikes, there are no gentle cures, only desperate ones. Imagine breaking your arm in the fields. The bone cracks with a sound that makes your stomach turn. The pain is sharp, deep, and unrelenting. You cannot stop working for long, but you must find help. The local healer, a woman who knows her plants and poultices, arrives with strips of cloth, honey, and willow bark. She splints your arm with sticks and binds it tightly. There are no painkillers beyond ale, or perhaps a few drops of poppy syrup, if she has it. The ache is unbearable, but you endure. Infection is always the real danger. Even a simple wound can swell, turn red, and begin to rot. Once that happens, your options are few and cruel. The most common treatment is bleeding. Physicians believe that illness comes from an imbalance of the body's four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. If you are sick, it means one of these is in excess, and the cure is to remove it. They use leeches, knives, or sharp glass cups to draw blood, believing it will restore balance. It rarely helps. People grow weak, faint, and often die from the treatment itself. Yet the practice continues for centuries, unquestioned. You sit in a chair, pale and sweating, as the physician makes a neat cut on your arm. The blood runs down into a bowl, the room smells of iron, and you wonder how something that feels like dying could possibly make you well. For fevers and stomach pains, purging is another remedy. Physicians mix up potions of herbs and minerals designed to force vomiting or diarrhea, hoping to flush the sickness out. The taste is foul, the pain worse. Mercury, arsenic, and lead sometimes find their way into these concoctions, and the cure poisons the patient more than the disease ever could. But without a better understanding of medicine, people trust these methods. Knowledge is limited, and tradition carries the weight of truth. If your tooth aches, the barber is the one you visit. Barbers do not only cut hair, they are surgeons, bone setters, and dentists. You sit on a wooden stool in a smoky room as the barber examines your mouth. There is no anesthetic, no antiseptic. He grips the tooth with a pair of iron pliers and yanks hard. The crack echoes through your skull, and the pain makes your vision flash white. There is blood, and you taste iron and ash. He wipes his hands on a rag, nods, and tells you the pain will pass. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it turns into infection, spreading deeper until the swelling closes your throat. Death from something as small as a toothache is common, and no one is surprised when it happens. Surgery exists, but it is brutal. There are no sterile rooms or soft beds, only wooden tables and strong hands to hold you down. Surgeons work quickly, using knives that have been wiped on their aprons. They amputate limbs, drain abscesses, and remove arrows from wounds. They rely on speed and luck because infection lurks in every cut. The smell of blood, sweat, and fear fills the air. You scream until your voice fails, and afterward, you lie awake through the night, praying the fever doesn't come. Sometimes they pour boiling oil into the wound to seal it. Sometimes they cauterize it with red-hot iron. Either way, the pain is beyond imagining. For mental illness or unseen ailments, the treatments are worse still. If someone acts strangely, speaks to themselves, trembles, or sees visions, the cause is thought to be sin, demons, or imbalance. The cure might be prayer, fasting, or even exorcism. Some are locked away in cells beneath monasteries, their cries echoing through the night. Others are beaten to drive out spirits, or forced to drink strange mixtures meant to calm the mind. Compassion is rare, and understanding non-existent. The monks and nuns who serve in hospitals and infirmaries are often the kindest healers. Their knowledge comes from practice and care rather than wealth or education. They grow herbs in cloistered gardens, sage, rosemary, mint, and lavender, believing that God placed cures in nature for those who seek them. Their hospitals are places of rest rather than recovery. The sick are laid in long halls, heads propped on straw, while brothers and sisters move quietly between them with bowls of broth or cloth soaked in vinegar. They do not expect miracles. They simply offer comfort until death or healing arrives. For many, that kindness is worth more than any cure. Midwives, too, hold power in this world. They bring life into a world surrounded by death, though they risk their own lives with every birth. Childbirth is dangerous. Bleeding, fever, and infection claim countless women. The midwife knows the signs, the prayers, and the herbs that might help, but she cannot perform magic. Sometimes both mother and child survive. Sometimes neither does. And when tragedy strikes, she is often blamed, accused of witchcraft or failure, her wisdom turned against her. The line between healer and heretic is thin and fragile. Among the poor, healing is shared knowledge, whispered recipes, charms, and rituals passed down through generations. A poultice of garlic and honey for infection. A potion of mint and vinegar for fever. A stone worn around the neck to keep away bad spirits. Faith and practicality blend together. People do what they can with what they have, trusting that God will handle the rest. There is courage in that, even in its helplessness. And yet, amid all this pain, people keep seeking cures. They refuse to give up. Even when the treatments fail, when the pain grows worse, when the healer shakes their head and walks away, the will to live remains fierce. There are stories of people surviving wounds that should have killed them, of fevers that broke after days of agony, of mothers who rose again after childbirth thought fatal. In a world without science, survival itself is a kind of miracle. Medicine in the medieval age is not about comfort, it is about endurance. Every cure is a gamble, every wound a lesson in pain. To live through treatment is to live through torture, and yet people face it with a quiet courage born of necessity. There are no soft hospitals or sterile tools here, only the strength to endure what must be endured. And when the fever finally breaks, when the pain fades into dull memory, you realize that in this age, healing is not just the absence of illness, it is the victory of survival itself. In the medieval world, fear is as constant as hunger. It shapes how people speak, how they move, and even how they think. The threat of punishment hangs over every life like a shadow, cold, silent, and unrelenting. Law and order are not about justice as we understand it today. They are about control. The Lord, the Church, and the Crown rule through fear, and their punishments are designed not only to hurt the guilty, but to remind everyone else what happens when you step out of line. There are laws for everything, though few can read them. They are not written for common folk to understand. They are spoken by stewards, judges, or priests, and interpreted as they see fit. Theft, blasphemy, adultery, disobedience, each crime carries its own weight of consequence. The punishments are swift, public, and brutal. They are meant to teach through spectacle, to burn the image of fear into the minds of those who watch. If you are caught stealing, the punishment depends on who you are. A nobleman may pay a fine, a peasant may lose a hand. The thief is dragged into the village square, where the people gather in silence. The Lord's bailiff announces the crime, his voice carrying over the crowd. The condemned kneels trembling as a man with a hammer and blade steps forward. There is no mercy, no quickness. The blow lands hard, and the scream that follows echoes long after the blood soaks into the dirt. Children watch, their faces pale. The crowd murmurs prayers. No one looks away for long, because to turn your back might draw suspicion. Blasphemy against the Church is an even graver offense. To speak against God or the priest is to risk your soul as well as your body. Heresy is feared above all else. Those accused of it are tried by clerics who see doubt as disease. The accused might be stretched on the rack, their limbs pulled until joints pop, or burned with hot irons to force confession. The Church believes pain can cleanse sin, and many confess simply to make the agony stop. Once declared guilty, a heretic's fate is sealed. The pyre is built high in the village square, the wood crackling, the air thick with smoke. The crowd gathers again, this time to witness salvation through fire. The priest prays aloud as the flames rise, and the smell of burning flesh becomes the price of order. Even smaller offenses carry cruel consequences. A man who speaks ill of his Lord might be whipped until his back is raw. A woman accused of gossip or theft may be placed in the stocks, her head and hands locked while villagers throw mud and refuse at her. The humiliation is worse than the pain. Days later, she will still hear their laughter. Others may be branded with hot iron, the mark of shame burned into their flesh forever. Once branded, no one will trust you again. You become a living warning. Towns and cities have their own justice, no kinder than the countryside. The stocks stand in every marketplace, the gallows at every gate. Executions draw crowds, for in a world with little entertainment, punishment is a grim spectacle. Vendors sell bread and ale as people gather to watch the condemned die. The hangman is both feared and respected, a man who earns his living from death. He sharpens his axe before each beheading, muttering to himself, "When the moment comes, the crowd falls silent. One strike, sometimes two, and it's done. The head rolls, the blood spills, and the murmurs return. The punishment is over, but the lesson lingers. For the poorest, punishment can come without crime at all. The Lord's word is law, and his anger needs no justification. If his taxes are unpaid, if a field is left fallow, if his orders are delayed, he may send his men to take what they please. They ride through the village with torches and whips, shouting commands, kicking down doors. Resistance is met with violence. Families are dragged outside, beaten, their goods seized. The fire consumes what little they own, and by morning, all that remains is ash and silence. The survivors rebuild because they must. But the fear never leaves. The church, too, disciplines its own. Monks who break their vows may be flogged or made to fast until faint. A nun who disobeys her superior may be forced to kneel in prayer for hours or locked alone in silence. The soul, they say, must be corrected through suffering. Even penance for sin is harsh pilgrimages that last months, crawling to holy shrines on bare knees, or long nights spent lying on cold stone floors, begging for forgiveness. The line between punishment and devotion blurs until they are one and the same. Superstition deepens the fear. The people believe that punishment follows not only from man, but from God himself. Bad harvests, sickness, and storms are seen as signs of divine wrath. A farmer who curses the sky when his crops fail may wake to find his neighbors whispering that he angered the Almighty. The priest might call for confession or public repentance, and the man, terrified of eternal damnation, will kneel in the mud before the entire village, begging forgiveness for sins he cannot name. Fear governs every heart, binding the people in obedience as tightly as the Lord's chains. Yet amid the cruelty, there are moments of mercy. Some judges, weary of blood, commute punishments to fines or public prayers. A priest may speak on behalf of a repentant soul, sparing them the gallows. And there are small acts of kindness, neighbors, who slip bread to a prisoner in the stocks, or families who bury the executed quietly in unmarked graves. These small mercies are not enough to erase the fear, but they keep humanity alive in a world ruled by terror. At night, when the fires burn low and the village lies in uneasy silence, people whisper their prayers, not just for protection, but for pardon. They pray to avoid notice, to pass unseen through the eyes of the Lord and the Church, to live quietly, obediently, without drawing fate's cruel attention. The fear of punishment seeps into dreams, shaping even the smallest choices. A spoken word, a missed tithe, a thought unguarded any could bring ruin. In the medieval world, justice is not blind. It sees clearly who you are, where you were born, and how much you possess. The poor fear the whip, the rich fear disgrace, and all fear the judgment of God. The lash, the gallows, the fire, they are not just tools of punishment. They are reminders that in this time, power is survival, and mercy is as rare as peace. Faith in the medieval world is not just belief, it is law, air, and the rhythm of life itself. Every thought, every act, every moment from birth to death is shaped by the Church. Its presence is absolute. The bell rings from the village chapel at dawn, at midday, and again as the sun falls, marking time not by the movement of the sky, but by the call to prayer. The cross hangs above every bed, and the words of priests echo through every heart. Yet faith here is not gentle or forgiving. It is strict, powerful, and often cruel. It demands obedience, humility, and constant fear of divine judgment. To live in this time is to believe that God watches, always listening, not only to what you say, but to what you think. A sinful thought is enough to damn your soul. Heaven and hell are not abstract ideas. They are vividly real, painted on church walls in colors that sear the mind. You see heaven as a golden garden, shining with angels, but hell is far more detailed, Flames, chains, demons tearing at flesh, souls screaming without end. The priest preaches these visions every week, his voice booming through the small stone church, his eyes hard as he reminds his flock that sin is in every heart. Fear becomes the foundation of faith. You obey not only because you love God, but because you dread his wrath. Every Sunday, the entire village gathers for Mass. The air inside the church is cold, heavy with incense and smoke. The Latin words roll from the priest's lips. Few understand them, but everyone listens. The language of heaven is foreign, distant, but its power is unquestioned. The priest's robe glitters faintly in the candlelight, a symbol of his authority. He speaks of sin, penance, and salvation. The people kneel on the hard floor, murmuring prayers in voices rough from labor. Some clutch wooden beads, others bow their heads in silence. The service lasts for hours, but no one dares to complain. To be absent from church is to be noticed, and in a world ruled by suspicion, being noticed is dangerous. Confession is both a comfort and a terror. You kneel in the dim corner of the church, your heart pounding, your hands trembling. The priest listens through a wooden screen, his shadow faint behind the lattice. You confess your sins, perhaps a lie, a curse, a forbidden thought, and he assigns your penance. Pray 10 times, give a loaf of bread to the poor, fast for 3 days. For heavier sins, the punishments are harsher. A pilgrimage, public humiliation, or years of quiet service to the church. You leave relieved, but afraid you forgot something. Did you remember every sin? Did you confess enough? If you missed one, even by accident, your soul may burn forever. The church's reach extends far beyond the chapel. It dictates what you may eat, when you may marry, when you may rest. There are dozens of holy days, days of fasting and feasting, days when meat is forbidden and labor must stop. A calendar is sacred, and to disobey it is to risk eternal punishment. Even birth and death belong to the church. Infants are baptized as soon as they can draw breath, for an unbaptized child's soul is believed to wander in limbo forever. The dying are anointed with oil, their final prayers whispered by priests. Life is bookended by rituals meant to guard the soul from darkness. But for all its power, faith offers comfort too. It gives meaning to suffering, purpose to hardship. When the harvest fails or disease sweeps through the village, the priest reminds the people that their trials are tests, that enduring them with humility brings them closer to salvation. Heaven becomes the promise that justifies every pain. It is the great reward waiting beyond the misery of this world, the dream that keeps people moving when life offers nothing else. You hear the hymns sung softly at dusk, voices rising from every cottage, and for a brief moment, the world feels almost peaceful. Superstition fills the spaces where faith cannot explain. The church warns against magic, yet the people cannot help but believe in it. The unknown is everywhere, in storms, in sickness, in sudden death, and so they fill the gaps with stories. A black cat crossing your path is bad luck. A strange mark on your skin might mean a curse. If a baby falls ill, some say it has been looked upon by an envious spirit. If milk sours too quickly, they whisper that a witch has cursed the cow. The church condemns these beliefs. It also uses them. When fear rises, it names an enemy. Witches, heretics, and unbelievers become scapegoats for every misfortune. Fires burn in their name, and prayers rise in smoke. Monks and priests collect relics, bones of saints, fragments of holy cloth, drops of oil said to have touched the divine. Pilgrims travel great distances to see them, crawling to shrines on hands and knees. The faithful believe these relics heal, forgive, and protect. Some kiss the glass cases where they are kept. Others press coins into the hands of priests, hoping to buy favor in the eyes of God. The church grows rich on faith, its cathedrals rising higher with every offering. Yet few question it. To doubt the church is to doubt salvation itself. The fear of hell is matched only by the fear of witchcraft and sin. When lightning strikes a barn or crops fail, people search for someone to blame. A widow who lives alone, a healer who knows too much about herbs, a child who dreams strange dreams, all are suspect. The priest gathers the villagers, and questions turn to accusations. The crowd's fear becomes anger, and anger becomes punishment. The accused may be whipped, drowned, or burned, their cries drowned by the prayers of those who believe they are saving a soul. The same faith that brings comfort also brings horror. Yet within this darkness, faith still binds communities together. Bells call the people to prayer, and those same bells ring in times of joy, at weddings, at births, at harvest celebrations. Songs of praise echo through the fields, mingling with the sound of the wind. People carve crosses into their doorframes, wear small charms of saints around their necks, and greet one another with blessings. Belief gives them a sense of order, a fragile peace in a chaotic world. As night falls, families gather by the fire, whispering prayers before sleep. The flicker of the flame dances over the faces of the weary, their hands clasped, their voices low. Outside, the wind howls, carrying the faint toll of the church bell from the hill. It is both a comfort and a warning, a reminder that God watches all, and that faith, for better or worse, governs every breath. In the medieval world, faith is not soft. It is iron and fire. It offers hope to the hopeless, but demands fear in return. It builds cathedrals that reach for heaven, even as it burns heretics below. And though it binds the people in obedience, it also gives them something no lord can take away, the belief that, after all the suffering of this life, there may still be peace in the next. To be a woman in the medieval world is to live a life of constant labor, sacrifice, and silence. For a peasant woman, every day begins before the first light of dawn and ends long after the last embers of the hearth have cooled. She carries the weight of her family, her home and her field on her shoulders, often without recognition or rest. Her world is small, bound by the walls of her cottage and the borders of her lord's land, yet within it she must play every role: farmer, mother, cook, healer, and servant. Survival depends on her endurance. The day begins in darkness. The rooster crows faintly in the distance, and she rises from the straw bed, careful not to wake the children sleeping beside her. Her back aches, her hands rough from years of work. She tends to the fire first, blowing gently on the ashes until the coals glow red again. The fire is life. It cooks, warms, and keeps away the cold that creeps through the cracks in the walls. Once it's burning, she moves through the small room, her steps quiet and practiced. The air smells of smoke, milk, and damp earth. There's no time for stillness. There never is. She fetches water from the well, the bucket heavy and cold against her skin. The sky is pale gray now, the village slowly waking. She kneads dough from coarse barley flour, her fingers moving automatically. The bread will be hard by noon, but it will fill empty bellies. The older children help where they can, feeding the chickens or gathering kindling. The youngest clings to her skirt, hungry and tired. She hums softly to calm the child, a tune learned from her own mother long ago. The melody is worn, but comforting. Once breakfast bread and weak ale is eaten, her true work begins. She joins her husband in the fields, hoeing the soil or tending to livestock. The sun rises, bringing heat and sweat, but she doesn't stop. Her skirt gathers dust, her hair clings to her neck, and her feet sink into the mud. She works as hard as any man, though no one says it aloud. When her husband pauses to rest, she keeps moving, because the work must be done. Her body knows no difference between male and female labor-only necessity. The field does not care who holds the hoe. When she's not in the fields, she's spinning wool or weaving cloth. Her spindle is never still, her fingers twisting fibers into thread with steady precision. The sound of spinning fills her evenings, a soft whir that hums like the pulse of the home. She weaves clothing for her family, repairs what tears she can, and stores the rest for the cold months to come. Every thread is a victory, every finished garment a sign that they will endure another season. Motherhood is both her pride and her burden. She bears many children, though not all survive. Infant deaths are common, and each one leaves a scar she carries quietly. There is no time to mourn. Life demands her attention. When a child falls ill, she mixes herbs into teas and prays to the Virgin for mercy. The midwife is her closest ally and her greatest fear. Birth is dangerous. She knows that every time she gives life, she also stands close to death. She's seen women bleed out in the straw or fade days later with fever. And yet, she continues, because family is the only wealth she possesses. Her marriage is not a matter of love, but of survival. Most girls are wed by the time they are 15, often to men twice their age. The match is arranged by families or by the Lord's steward, based on work and property, not affection. She may come to love her husband, or she may not. Either way, she must obey him. The Church teaches that the man is the head of the household, that a woman's duty is to serve, to bear children, and to be silent. The sermons tell her that Eve brought sin into the world, and that every pain she feels is her inheritance. She accepts it because there is no other truth offered. But within her world of obedience, she finds quiet strength. She makes decisions that shape her family's survival, how to stretch the grain through winter, how to tend the animals, when to barter with neighbors. She teaches her daughters to spin, her sons to plant, and her family to pray. When her husband falls ill, she works twice as hard without complaint. When he drinks too much and shouts, she endures in silence, knowing tomorrow will come with the same duties waiting. Her resilience is not loud. It is steady and unbreakable. Sundays bring a brief reprieve. She walks to church in her best dress, the same one she's worn for years, patched and faded but clean. The priest speaks of virtue and sin, of obedience and heaven's reward. She listens, half in understanding, half in fatigue. The air is cold inside the stone walls, and the scent of incense clings to her hair. After the service, she exchanges soft words with other women about births, harvests, and rumors of sickness. These quiet conversations are her only form of community, her only breath of freedom. When evening falls, she returns home to prepare supper stew made from cabbage, leeks, and whatever scraps remain. The children eat first, the men next, and she last. It's not cruelty. It's custom. Her hunger is familiar, a background ache she's learned to live with. After the meal, she tidies the house, mends clothes, and rocks the youngest child to sleep. The fire burns low, shadows dancing along the walls. Her body throbs with exhaustion, yet her mind drifts to small dreams of a good harvest, of her children growing strong, of a night without pain. She rarely sees beyond her village. The idea of travel, of adventure, belongs to others, merchants, knights, nobles. Her world is the soil beneath her feet and the sky above her cottage. And though her life is hard, she finds beauty in moments the rich might overlook. The smell of fresh bread, the laughter of her children, the song of birds over the fields. These are her treasures, fleeting but precious. When she grows old, if she is lucky enough to reach old age, her body bends and her hands tremble. She watches her daughters take her place, their movements mirroring her own. The cycle continues, generation after generation, each woman living much the same life as the one before. There is no escape from the hardship, but there is dignity in endurance. The strength of these women is quiet, invisible, but it holds the entire world together. In the medieval world, the life of a peasant woman is not one of freedom, but of endless duty. Yet within that duty lies a deep, unspoken resilience. She bears the burdens of poverty, labor, and loss, and still finds the will to wake each morning and begin again. History rarely remembers her name, but without her, the world she sustained would not have survived a single day. When people think of the medieval world, they often imagine knights brave warriors in shining armor, riding across green fields with banners flying. To the peasant, the knight is both protector and oppressor, a figure of awe and fear. But beneath the steel and ceremony, the life of a knight is far from glamorous. It is a world of unending duty, violent expectation, and the heavy burden of honor. A knight's life may seem powerful from afar, yet it is bound by rules as strict and punishing as any peasant's chain. A knight is not born in armor. His training begins in childhood, often as early as 7 years old. The son of a nobleman is sent away from home to live in the household of another lord, where he serves first as a page. The boy cleans boots, carries messages, tends to horses, and learns manners that will define his future. He studies the code of chivalry, words that sound noble, loyalty, courage, humility, and faith. But the lessons are hard, and the discipline relentless. Every mistake earns punishment. Every weakness must be hidden. He watches the older squires practice swordplay and dreams of the day he'll be allowed to hold a blade himself. By the age of 14, the page becomes a squire. Now the real training begins. He learns to ride at full gallop, to wield sword, lance, and shield, to fight with both grace and brutality. His days are filled with drills that bruise and break bones, his nights with cleaning armor and sharpening blades. The sword is heavy, the chainmail heavier still. He learns how to fall without dying, how to fight without fear, and how to serve without question. He attends his night in battle, standing close enough to see death clearly for the first time. The screams, the blood, the chaos, these become part of him before he is even grown. When he is judged ready, usually in his early 20s, the ceremony of knighthood is both sacred and grim. He spends the night before in prayer, alone in the chapel, his sword laid before him on the altar. He does not sleep. At dawn, he is bathed and dressed in white to symbolize purity. The lord or king touches his shoulder with a blade and speaks the solemn words. In the name of God, Saint Michael, and Saint George, I dub thee knight. From that moment, he is bound by oath to serve his lord, to defend the faith, and to uphold the laws of chivalry. But the ideals are easier spoken than lived. A knight's armor gleams in the sunlight, but it hides exhaustion and fear. The weight of a full suit of mail and plate can reach more than 60 pounds. Beneath it, he wears a padded garment soaked in sweat, his body constantly bruised and sore. The heat is suffocating in summer, the cold unbearable in winter. He learns to fight through pain, through thirst, through the screams of men and horses. The battlefield is not a place of honor. It is chaos, blood, and noise. The air is thick with the smell of iron and death. Arrows whistle through the sky, swords clash, and men shout prayers as they die. Victory often belongs not to bravery, but to luck. When war is not raging, the knight's duties continue. He patrols his lord's lands, enforces his will, and collects taxes from those who serve below. He is expected to both warrior and judge, protector and punisher. Some knights are fair and just, keeping their oaths with sincerity. Others abuse their power, taking what they please and ruling through fear. Peasants may bow when he passes, but they do not cheer. His shadow means authority, not safety. Tournaments offer a brief escape from the battlefield, but are no less dangerous. The joust, with its thunder of hooves and shattering of lances, is a violent sport disguised as honor. Knights face one another before cheering crowds, their armor polished, their banners bright. But bones break, horses fall, and sometimes death comes swiftly, even in play. The glory of victory is fleeting, the pain eternal. Many knights carry scars that never heal, both seen and unseen. The code of chivalry demands purity, loyalty, and faith, but knights are human. They are tempted by wealth, pride, and power. Some live by the sword in the service of justice. Others use it for greed. Crusades call them to foreign lands, promising salvation and eternal reward for fighting in the name of God. Many go willingly, dreaming of both heaven and glory. What they find instead is hardship and horror disease, hunger and endless slaughter in strange lands far from home. When they return, if they return, they are changed. Some come back rich with plunder, others broken and hollow, their faith buried with the men they killed. Even in peace, the knight's life is not his own. His days are filled with duty to his lord, his king, and his God. He trains constantly, his body hardened to serve. He manages his small estate, if he has one, overseeing serfs and crops. He attends feasts and councils, bowing to nobles above him, reminding himself always of his place in the grand order. For all his armor and titles, he is still bound by loyalty. To defy his lord is to risk everything, even death. The higher he climbs, the steeper the fall. In private moments, when the candles burn low and the world grows quiet, a knight may wonder if the glory he was promised ever truly existed. He remembers the faces of those he's killed, the cries of men left behind on the battlefield, the smell of blood on his armor. He may pray for forgiveness, or he may bury those memories deep where they can never touch him again. The songs sung about knights speak of honor and valor, but no song tells of the fear that lives beneath the helmet, or the loneliness that comes from a life built on violence. For his wife, his children, and his servants, the knight is a distant figure. His absence defines their lives. Months may pass without his return, and when he does come home, he brings the war with him, in his scars, his silence, his haunted eyes. He kneels in church, seeking peace, but his mind is never still. Duty calls again and again, and he answers, because that is what he was made to do. The burden of knighthood is not the sword or the armor, it is the weight of expectation. To be noble, brave, devout, and obedient all at once is impossible, yet he must try. He lives not for himself, but for his name, his Lord, and his God, and those songs will remember him as a hero. The truth is harsher. The knight's life is one of sacrifice and servitude, of endless struggle between honor and survival. When he dies, whether on the battlefield or in his bed, his sword will be laid beside him, his hands crossed in prayer. The bells will toll, and the priest will speak of valor and grace. But the ground that covers him will not know his titles or his battles. In the end, like every man of his age, the knight returns to the same earth that peasants till and nobles rule. Beneath the armor and glory, he was only human, bound by duty and crushed beneath the burden of his own legend. Above the peasants who till the soil and the knights who fight in armor stands the medieval lord, a figure of immense privilege, wealth, and authority. His castle rises above the land like a symbol of dominance, its towers cutting into the sky, its banners fluttering in the wind. To those below, he is almost another kind of being, half man, half symbol. He owns the land, commands the people, and answers only to the king, or at times, to God himself. Yet behind the grandeur of his halls and the glimmer of his feasts lies a life not without its own burdens of politics, paranoia, and the constant need to maintain power through fear, loyalty, or both. The Lord's day begins not with labor, but with ceremony. Servants enter his chamber at dawn to rekindle the fire, bring warm water for washing, and lay out his clothes. The fabric is heavy and rich, dyed with colors that peasants could never afford. He breaks his fast with bread, fruit, and wine, served by attendants who bow deeply before speaking. Around him, the castle stirs to life, the sound of armor being polished, the clatter of kitchen pots, the voices of guards changing watch. His word governs every soul within these walls, from the steward who manages his estate to the scullery boy who scrubs the floors. Every man and woman who works here knows their place, and each one bows when he passes. Power in the medieval world is not simply owned, it must be performed. The Lord must appear strong, just, and noble, even when he is none of these things. His people expect him to embody the ideals of chivalry, courage, faith, and protection. He must hold court regularly, settling disputes among his tenants. Peasants kneel before him, their heads bowed as they plead for mercy or fairness. He listens, though the outcome is often predetermined. Favors and justice are dispensed in proportion to loyalty and usefulness. The poor might gain a kind word, but the loyal gain coin, land, or protection. The Lord's hall is not a place of equality, it is a theater of hierarchy. Yet even with his wealth, the Lord is not free. He serves a higher master, the king, and owes him taxes, soldiers, and allegiance. He must keep the crown's favor, for losing it could mean losing everything. A wrong word at court, a missed tithe, or a rumor of rebellion could destroy him. Feudal power is built on fragile foundations, alliances, marriages, and debts. A noble's survival depends as much on politics as on battle. Every guest in his hall might be a friend or a spy. Every feast is both a celebration and a test of loyalty. The smile he gives across the table hides the careful watch behind his eyes. War is both his duty and his fear. When the king calls for arms, the Lord must answer, leading his knights and peasants into battle. He rides at the front, his armor gleaming, his banner high, but war is costly. Horses die, weapons break, men are lost. The spoils of victory rarely match the expense of defeat. A failed campaign can ruin even the wealthiest noble. To maintain his army, the Lord taxes his tenants heavily, taking grain, livestock, and coin. His subjects grumble, but they pay, for refusal means punishment or worse. His strength depends on their obedience, and their obedience depends on fear. Within the castle, life is both lavish and lonely. The great hall is filled with light from torches and hearths, banners hanging from the rafters, the smell of roasted meat filling the air. Feasts are held often, with musicians playing and cups overflowing. But beneath the laughter and song, politics hum quietly. Every guest watches the others. Every toast hides intent. Nobles speak in riddles and compliments, testing alliances as carefully as swords. The Lord's wife sits beside him, graceful and silent, her words chosen with care. Her duty is to manage the household, oversee servants, and maintain her husband's honor. Her marriage, like his alliances, is not about love but power. Despite the appearance of grandeur, the castle itself is no paradise. The stone walls are cold and damp, the corridors drafty, and the air thick with smoke from countless fires. The rooms are dim, lit only by flickering candles. Rats scurry in the shadows, and the stench of waste seeps from the lower halls. Even a lord cannot escape the discomforts of his age. He may sit on a throne of carved wood and wear rings of gold, but he still breathes the same smoky air as those who serve him. For the peasants outside the castle walls, the Lord's power is absolute. They work his land, pay his taxes, and depend on his permission to marry, move, or hunt. He may protect them from raiders or rival lords, but he also holds the right to punish, imprison, or take what he pleases. Some lords rule with fairness, understanding that loyalty grows from mercy. Others rule with cruelty, their dungeons filled, their gallows busy. Peasants whisper stories of both of kind masters who fed the hungry, and of tyrants whose names are still cursed long after their deaths. To them, the Lord is both a god and a devil, capable of saving or destroying with a single command. Religion, too, ties into his power. The church blesses his rule, declaring his authority divine. He donates gold to monasteries and land to abbeys, buying prayers for his soul and legitimacy for his name. The priest praises him in sermons, calling him the guardian of the people, chosen by God. And in return, he ensures that the church remains loyal, for spiritual favor is as valuable as any army. Even the mightiest noble fears excommunication, the loss of salvation, the shunning of the faithful. It is the one chain that binds him as tightly as any servant. In his later years, when his hair turns gray and his strength fades, the Lord begins to feel the weight of his life. He has built walls, fought battles, and made enemies. He has gained land and lost men. He looks out from the tower window at the fields below, the same fields that his peasants plow each morning, and wonders what all his power has bought him. The songs of the minstrels speak of glory, but his memory is filled with betrayal, blood, and fear. His sons quarrel over inheritance, his allies drift away, and his priest whispers of the sins that must be confessed before death. For all his wealth, he cannot buy peace. When death finally comes, it is quiet. He lies in a bed of fine linen, surrounded by priests chanting softly. Candles burn at his bedside, their smoke curling upward. His titles are read aloud, his victories remembered, his soul commended to heaven. Outside, the villagers toll the church bell, its sound carrying over the fields. The peasants bow their heads, some in respect, others in indifference. A new lord will take his place, and life will go on. For all their grandeur, the lords of the medieval world are prisoners of their own power. They rule through fear, yet live in fear themselves, of kings, of war, of death, of damnation. Their castles are fortresses not only against enemies, but against the world itself. And though history remembers them as noble, powerful, and divine, they too are bound by the same fate as those they command. A brief life, marked by struggle ending in the same cold earth that lies beneath every peasant's feet. If there is one truth that defines the life of the medieval poor, it is hunger. It is the constant companion, the ache that never fades, the shadow that follows every season. Hunger is not an event or a crisis, it is a way of life. Even in times of good harvest, the food never feels like enough. The people live too close to the edge, and all it takes is a failed crop, an early frost, or too much rain to push them into despair. There are no stores of plenty, no safety nets, no markets overflowing with abundance. The fields decide who eats and who starves, and the earth itself can be merciless. The morning begins with that familiar emptiness in the belly. A hard crust of bread is all that stands between you and faintness. You chew slowly, savoring each bite as if it were a feast. The bread is dense and dark, made from rye or barley, often mixed with whatever filler can be found: bean flour, acorns, ground weeds. Wheat, the grain of the wealthy, is a luxury you may taste only a handful of times in your life. Your drink is ale, weak and thin, brewed because the water is often unsafe. It dulls the edge of hunger for a little while, but not for long. If you are lucky, there is pottage simmering in the pot by the fire, a stew of cabbage, onions, leeks, and perhaps a scrap of meat if fortune favors you. The pot never truly empties. Each day, new ingredients are added, the flavor deepening as it ages. It is the heart of the home, the one thing that stands between the family and starvation. The smell of boiling vegetables fills the air, thick and earthy. Children stare at the pot with wide eyes, counting the hours until it's ready. The mother stirs it quietly, knowing that there won't be enough for everyone to be full. For peasants, the year is measured not in months, but in harvests. Spring brings planting, summer brings growth, autumn brings the yield, and winter brings hunger. Every season carries its own kind of fear. A bad storm, a swarm of pests, a late frost, any of these can mean disaster. When the harvest fails, desperation sets in. People scrape at the earth for roots and weeds, oil nettles and bark, or grind acorns into bitter flour. The very old and the very young grow thin first. The strong pretend not to notice their own weakness, pretending they're not hungry so the children can eat a little more. The Lord's granaries are full, but they are not for you. His taxes come first. Even in famine, the tithe to the church and the grain owed to the manor must be paid. Peasants beg for mercy, but mercy is rare. The steward measures the grain with cold precision, taking what is owed, no matter how empty your sacks may be. The church bell tolls in the distance, calling for prayer, but faith is hard to hold when the stomach growls louder than the hymns. Still, you pray, because hope is all that's left. Hunger does strange things to people. It dulls the mind and sharpens the senses. You start to see food everywhere, in dreams, in clouds, in the way sunlight hits the wheat fields you cannot touch. A loaf of bread becomes a vision of heaven. The smell of roasting meat from the Lord's kitchen is almost unbearable, a cruel reminder of what you'll never taste. In the dead of night, some sneak into the woods to hunt, even though it's forbidden. A snare, a rabbit, a few berries each is a small act of rebellion, a risk worth taking. If caught, the punishment is severe, but hunger leaves no room for fear. Winter is the cruelest season. The fields are bare, the rivers freeze, and the stores grow smaller each week. You ration what's left: dry beans, salted vegetables, a few onions shriveled and soft. The children's faces grow pale, their eyes sunken. Coughs spread easily in the cold, and the weak begin to fade. When the last of the bread is gone, you mix sawdust or straw into the flour, anything to fill the stomach. Some boil leather or chew old bones, hoping to draw flavor from them. Others pick through the refuse behind the manor, searching for scraps the dogs have missed. The world feels gray and endless, a long hunger that stretches beyond the horizon. In the towns, things are not much better. Bread prices rise when harvests fail, and the poor riot in the streets, shouting at bakers and merchants. The guards are sent to restore order, but they too are hungry. In monasteries, the monks open their doors to the starving, doling out thin soup and bread, though there is never enough to go around. Lines form before dawn, men and women waiting in silence, clutching their children. The smell of desperation fills the air. For every bowl served, another 10 go hungry. The wealthy feast through it all. In the Lord's hall, tables groan under the weight of roasted boar, spiced wine, and soft white bread. Musicians play while servants carry platters past the flickering firelight. The laughter echoes down the stone corridors, reaching faintly into the cold night outside where peasants huddle around dying fires. They can smell the feast from afar, a cruel perfume that mingles with the smoke of their own misery. It is a reminder of the world's divide, of who eats and who watches. Sometimes miracles happen. A traveler brings grain from another region, or a neighbor shares what little he has. People gather together, cooking one meal for all, eating in silence, but feeling for a moment the warmth of community. Hunger may bend their bodies, but it does not break their spirit. They find strength in each other, in shared suffering, in the belief that spring will come again. When the thaw finally returns and green shoots appear in the soil, relief spreads like sunlight after a long night. The first loaf of new bread is more than food, it's hope made tangible. The people smile again, though their faces are thin and tired. They know the hunger will come again next year, and the year after that, but for now, they breathe, they eat, they live. Hunger is the great equalizer of the medieval world. It humbles kings and peasants alike, though not equally. It reminds every soul that no matter their strength or station, all depend on the same earth. To live in these times is to fight a battle that never truly ends, a battle not with swords or armies, but with the empty ache that waits beneath every meal. And yet, despite it all, the people endure. They plant, they harvest, they pray, and they survive. Because in this world, survival itself is a kind of victory. When the sun sinks beyond the fields and the last traces of light fade from the sky, the medieval world becomes a place of deep silence and fear. Night is not a time for leisure or comfort. It is a time of danger, superstition, and uneasy rest. The people of this world live without the safety of light, without the hum of cities or the glow of lamps. Once darkness falls, the world transforms into something unknown, something alive with sound and shadow. For the medieval mind, the night belongs not to men, but to the unseen. The day's work ends when the sun disappears. The fields fall still, the tools are laid aside, and the people retreat to their cottages. The doors are barred, the shutters close tight. A small fire glows in the hearth, the only light in the room. Its flickering glow casts long shadows across the walls, making the space seem smaller and yet endless. Families huddle close, their bodies sharing warmth. Outside, the wind moves through the trees, whispering through the thatch and stirring the animals in their pens. Every creak of the wood, every snap of the fire seems louder in the stillness. For peasants, the night is not a friend. The dark hides thieves, wolves, and worse. To step outside after sunset is an act of courage or desperation. There are no lamps along the roads, no lighted signs to guide your way. The moon, when it shines, is your only companion. When clouds cover it, the world vanishes into blackness, so complete that you cannot see your own hands. People tell stories of travelers who lost their way and vanished into the forest, never to be found. They say that spirits walk the paths at night, souls of the unburied, the unbaptized, or the damned. And so most stay inside, whispering prayers before sleep. Sleep itself is not what it is today. Beds are small, filled with straw, often shared by the whole family. The air is thick with the smell of smoke, sweat, and wool. People sleep in their clothes to stay warm, their bodies curled together beneath thin blankets. But sleep comes in two parts, broken by a waking period in the middle of the night. After several hours of rest, they wake naturally, some to stoke the fire, some to pray, others simply to think or talk quietly in the dim glow. Then, after an hour or two, they drift back into what they call second sleep. This rhythm belongs to the natural darkness, pattern shaped by the long nights and early mornings of their world. Outside, the animals move restlessly. The bleat of a goat, the bark of a dog, or the cry of an owl can stir unease. Every sound carries meaning. A fox in the henhouse, a thief in the distance, or perhaps something less explainable. Superstition fills the air after dark. People believe that witches gather under the moon to summon spirits, that demons roam the countryside looking for souls to claim. The boundary between the living and the dead feels thin in the night silence. Even the church reinforces this fear. Priests warn that the devil works hardest when the world is asleep, whispering temptation into dreaming minds. In towns, the darkness is no kinder. When the sun sets, the gates close, and anyone caught outside must find shelter or risk their life. Lanterns flicker along the narrow streets, but they do little to chase away the shadows. The smell of waste, beer, and smoke lingers in the air. Drunkards stagger from taverns, singing off-key songs as rats scurry between their feet. The night watchmen make their rounds, carrying pikes and torches, calling out the hours in tired voices. But even they are wary more of men than monsters. Thieves move silently through alleys, cutting purses and prying open shutters. A single shout for help might echo unanswered to the sleeping town. The wealthy, behind their castle walls, live differently, but not safely. Torches burn in the great hall. Guards stand by the doors, and dogs sleep at the foot of their masters' beds. Yet even here, the night breeds fear. The flicker of light makes the tapestries seem to move, and the howl of the wind through stone corridors sounds almost human. Servants whisper of ghosts haunting the towers, of knights who died in battle returning to wander the halls. In a world where life is short and death close, Such stories do not feel impossible. Even a lord might wake sweating from a nightmare, clutching his rosary in trembling hands. Firelight is precious. The hearth is not only warmth, but safety, a small island of light in a sea of darkness. Families gather around it, telling stories to pass the hours before bed. Tales of saints and sinners, of spirits and miracles, of beasts that roam the woods after dark. The children listen wide-eyed, half terrified, half entranced. These stories are warnings as much as entertainment, reminders to stay inside, to be humble, to keep faith. When the fire burns low, someone rises to stir it, feeding it another log before lying back down. The glow dims, then brightens again, like a heartbeat. Sometimes the night brings beauty. On clear evenings, the stars stretch across the sky in uncountable numbers, brighter than anyone in the modern world could imagine. The Milky Way glows like a silver path overhead, and the moon bathes the world in pale light. Travelers speak of feeling awe beneath it, a sense of smallness and wonder. Shepherds, keeping watch over their flocks, hum soft hymns to pass the time, their breath visible in the cold air. In these quiet hours, when the fear fades, the night feels wholly a vast cathedral of sky and silence. But more often, the night is long and heavy. Dreams are vivid and unsettling, shaped by hunger, fever, and fear. People wake in the dark, unsure if the sound they heard was real or imagined. The heart races, prayers are whispered, and the waiting begins, for dawn, for warmth, for safety. The rooster's crow, faint and distant, becomes the first sign of relief. Slowly, light returns, washing over the land in pale gray and gold. The shadows retreat, and with them, the fears of the night. The village stirs once more, weary but alive. In the medieval world, darkness is not just the absence of light, it is a living force, a thing to be respected and feared. It governs sleep, faith, and imagination. It hides danger, but also gives rest. And though it brings fear, it also brings silence, a rare kind of peace in a world of constant labor and noise. For those who live in these times, night is both enemy and companion, a reminder of how small they are in a vast and mysterious world, and how precious the dawn truly is. In the medieval world, death is not a stranger. It is an old companion that walks beside every man, woman, and child. It lingers in the fields, in the rivers, in the crowded alleys of towns. It arrives without warning through famine, disease, war, or childbirth, and leaves behind silence where laughter once lived. To the people of this time, death is not shocking. It is expected. But even so, when it comes, it fills the air with sounds that never fade, the cries of the dying, the toll of the church bell, the whispered prayers that follow each life into the grave. The day begins like any other, but by noon the illness has taken hold. A fever grips the body, the skin slick with sweat. The breath comes shallow and ragged. The family gathers around, their faces pale in the dim light of the fire. There is little they can do but pray. The village healer brings herbs, perhaps a charm or a cross made of straw, and lays them on the chest of the sick. The smell of damp earth and smoke fills the room. The dying person mutters softly sometimes in prayer, sometimes in confusion, sometimes calling out to those already gone. Everyone listens, waiting for the final breath, because death here is not hidden away in hospitals or far-off rooms. It happens among family, in the same space where life began. When the end finally comes, the priest is summoned. His arrival is marked by the sound of his steps on the frozen path, his robe brushing against the doorway as he enters. He carries a small candle and a vial of holy oil. The dying person is anointed, their forehead touched with trembling fingers. In Nomen Patris, the priest whispers, the words of last rites echoing in Latin, the language of eternity. The family kneels, their lips moving in rhythm with the prayer. The candle burns low. The light flickers and then fades. A single sob breaks the silence. The priest bows his head. Another soul has departed. The church bell tolls slowly, each sound rolling across the village like a heartbeat of sorrow. 1 ring for a child, 3 for a man, 4 for a woman. The people pause their work to cross themselves, murmuring a brief prayer for the departed. Death does not stop the world, but it touches everyone in it. Children learn early what those sounds mean. They watch as their elders carry the body out, wrapped in coarse linen, the feet bound together, the hands clasped over the chest. There is no coffin for most, just a simple shroud and a prayer. Funerals are brief, for the body cannot wait. In summer, heat brings decay swiftly. In winter, the ground is too hard to dig. The graveyard beside the church grows crowded, the wooden crosses leaning and splintered. The priest reads from the Psalms, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. The mourners stand in silence, the wind tugging at their cloaks. Someone weeps quietly. Someone else stares into the earth, expressionless. Life is hard, and grief must share space with duty. Tomorrow, there will still be fields to plow, bread to bake, children to feed. In towns and cities, death is louder. The bells ring constantly: funerals, plague victims, executions. The air smells of incense and decay. Processions wind through the streets, monks chanting prayers for the dead. Requiem aeternize. They sing, grant them eternal rest. The sound echoes off the stone walls, mingling with the cries of the living. For those who can afford it, funerals are grand affairs. Candles, banners, priests in rich robes, and prayers paid for by coin. For the poor, there is only a simple blessing and a shallow grave outside the churchyard walls. The fear of dying unconfessed haunts every soul. To die without the sacraments is to risk eternal damnation. The Church teaches that purgatory awaits those whose sins are not yet purged, a place of fire and waiting where the soul suffers until it is clean. Families pay for prayers and masses to speed their loved ones through it. The priest keeps a long list of names, those who wait between heaven and hell, and each Sunday he reads them aloud, his voice solemn and steady. The people bow their heads, their faith the only comfort against the terror of the unknown. But death is not always peaceful. On the battlefield, it comes with a roar. Knights and soldiers fall beneath blades and arrows, their cries lost in the chaos. The ground is soaked in blood, the air thick with the sound of moans and prayers. Some call to God, others to their mothers, their voices fading into the wind. The survivors dig shallow graves where they can, marking them with stones or broken weapons. The priests who travel with the armies move from one dying man to the next, muttering blessings until their voices give out. In war, there is no time for ceremony, only mercy. In the home, when death takes a child, the grief is sharp and unbearable, though muted by repetition. Mothers hold small bodies close, their tears falling silently. They wrap them in linen and place them in the earth with tiny crosses, trusting that heaven will be kinder than life ever was. The priest says that innocent souls go straight to God, that the child is safe now, untouched by hunger or cold. The mother nods, though her heart aches with a pain too deep for words. Yet amid all this loss, life continues. Death is not the end of community. It is part of it. The dead are remembered in prayers and songs. On All Souls' Day, candles burn in windows, and people walk through the graveyards, whispering names of those they've lost. They leave bread or coins by the graves, gifts for wandering souls. The boundary between life and death feels thin, like a veil that stirs in the wind, but never fully opens. The people live with death beside them, not as an enemy, but as a neighbor. Even the sound of the bell becomes a comfort. Its toll is steady, solemn, familiar. It marks not just loss, but belonging. Each life, no matter how brief, echoes through the village in that single haunting sound. When you hear it, You know you're part of something larger, a shared struggle, a shared fate. In the end, the medieval person does not fear death itself as much as dying badly alone, unshriven, forgotten. To die well is to die in faith, surrounded by prayer, with the promise of heaven waiting. And so they live in readiness, their rosaries close, their prayers practiced, their souls braced for the moment when the priest will come and the bell will toll. The sound of death and prayer fills this world like the rhythm of the seasons inevitable, mournful and strangely beautiful. It is the music of a people who understand that life is brief, that suffering is certain, but that in the end, every breath and every prayer lead to the same quiet earth, and they hope to something beyond it. As night stretches across the medieval world, dreams become the only escape from the endless weight of labor and hunger. For the poor, the sick, and the weary, dreams are small flickers of freedom, a place where life feels softer, where the burdens of survival momentarily fade. Yet even in sleep, the realities of this world creep in. The body is never free from pain, and the mind, steeped in fear and faith, cannot fully flee its chains. Still for a few hours each night, as the fire burns low and the village sinks into silence, the people of the Middle Ages drift into the fragile world of dreams, their imaginations stretching toward lives they will never live. You close your eyes in the darkness, the straw rustling beneath you, and your thoughts begin to blur. In your dream, you walk through fields of gold, untouched by frost or famine. The air smells of bread and honey. The sound of laughter drifts from a distant market. For once, your hands are clean, your belly full. You are free from the Lord's demands, the priest's warnings, the ceaseless ache of work. The sun warms your face, and you believe, if only for a moment, that this peace is real. In the dream, the world is wide and kind. But the dream, like all things here, is fleeting. Not all dreams bring comfort. Some are haunted by the fears of waking life. You dream of plague carts rolling through the village, of bells tolling endlessly, of your children crying out for food you cannot give. You see the faces of those you've lost, pale and silent, reaching for you from the dark. The church teaches that dreams can be messages from God or from the devil. The faithful fear their own minds, wondering if their visions are signs of sin or temptation. A bad dream might send someone to confession at dawn, trembling as they whisper of strange images and voices in the night. Even rest carries the weight of guilt. For others, the dream is escape of another kind. A young peasant imagines himself a knight, riding across the fields instead of plowing them, wielding a sword instead of a hoe. A girl dreams of silk dresses in golden halls, of feasts that never end and songs that never fade. But when morning comes, the dream dissolves with the smoke from the hearth, leaving behind only the dull ache of truth. The clothes are the same, the hunger the same, the work waiting just as it was. The dream fades, and the dawn feels cruel. The harshness of the medieval dawn is something you feel in your bones. The rooster's crow breaks the silence, dragging you back from whatever world your mind wandered through. The cold hits first, biting at your fingers and face. You pull yourself from the bed, the straw clinging to your clothes, the floor cold beneath your feet. The fire has burned down to ash. You move through the same motions as every morning, stirring the embers, fetching water, breaking bread. The same routine, repeated endlessly, defines your existence. The dream is gone, and reality presses down once more. Outside, the village wakes. Smoke curls from chimneys, dogs bark, and the low hum of voices rises as neighbors greet one another with tired nods. The fields wait, damp with morning dew. The sun creeps over the horizon, pale and cold. It should feel like a blessing, but to you, it feels like a command. The day begins again, and with it, the labor that never ends. You shoulder your tools, feeling the weight of them like shackles. The dream of freedom still lingers faintly, like a scent in the air, but it fades quickly beneath the sound of work. Even those in power cannot escape the burden of mourning. The Lord wakes in his chamber, surrounded by servants, yet feels the same pull of duty. His wealth binds him just as surely as the peasant's poverty. He must manage his lands, enforce his will, guard his reputation. The priest rises to pray, his knees sore from endless hours of kneeling. He speaks of salvation and divine purpose, but even he knows the fatigue that settles into the soul. The dawn spares no one. It exposes the truth of life here, that every person, high or low, begins the day with some measure of dread. Still, the people continue. The human spirit, worn and battered, refuses to yield entirely. Songs rise with the morning, soft and slow work songs, hymns, lullabies for the living. The women gather water and speak quietly to one another, finding comfort in shared struggle. The men bend their backs to the soil once more, their hands steady, their breath clouding in the chill air. Even in exhaustion, there is rhythm and purpose. Each movement, each task, carries a kind of grace, a stubborn refusal to surrender. Sometimes, when the light is right and the wind gentle, the world almost seems beautiful. The sun glints off the fields, the bells ring from the church tower, and for a brief moment, there is peace. The smell of baking bread drifts from a nearby home, and laughter spills from a group of children chasing one another in the mud. Life, for all its pain, persists. The same people who curse their fate also celebrate it in small ways, sharing a meal, singing a song, giving thanks for what little they have. Their endurance is quiet, but it is immense. Yet deep down, the dream of escape never dies. Some dream of running away to the city, to the monastery, to the sea. Others dream of heaven, of golden gates and endless light where hunger and sorrow cannot reach. The Church promises that those who suffer will be rewarded in the next life, that paradise waits beyond the grave. Whether that belief brings comfort or only resignation depends on the heart that holds it. For most, it is enough to keep going, to keep hoping that, somehow, the pain of this world will not be forever. As the day stretches forward, the dream fades completely, replaced by the steady march of hours. The tools strike the soil, the smoke rises, the voices blend into the hum of work. Life goes on as it always has, as it always will. The dream world and the waking one are not so different. After all, both are fleeting, both filled with longing. But the people of the medieval world learn to find strength in that longing. For even if escape never comes, the dream itself is proof that the spirit endures. When night returns, the same weary bodies will lie down again, and the dreams will come once more, some tender, some terrible, all shaped by the lives that give them birth. The cycle continues, unbroken, eternal. The dream, the dawn, the toil, the rest. It is the rhythm of survival, the heartbeat of a world that has known nothing else. And as the stars rise once more above the quiet village, you can almost hear it, the soft sigh of 1,000 dreamers, breathing in the dark, their hearts heavy with hope they do not dare to speak aloud. And so, as the last echoes of the medieval day fade into stillness, you are left standing in a world that feels both impossibly distant and hauntingly familiar. The air smells of smoke and earth. The church bell tolls faintly in the distance, and the whispers of lives long gone drift through the wind. You have seen what it means to survive here, to wake each morning to hunger, to labor, to faith, to fear. You have walked beside peasants bent beneath their burdens, knights hidden behind their armor, lords trapped within their own power, and women who held entire worlds together with hands warm from work. Every soul in this age lives by endurance, and every heartbeat is a quiet act of defiance against a world that never promised kindness. The medieval world is not the fantasy of shining castles and noble quests that stories often tell. It is harsh, cold, and painfully human. Every joy is fragile, every comfort brief, every breath uncertain. Yet somehow life persists. In laughter shared by candlelight, in the song of a plowman crossing the field, in a mother's whispered prayer over her sleeping child, there is something beautiful, a strength that refuses to break, no matter how dark the night becomes. If you were to stand here, truly, you would not last a day. The cold, the filth, the hunger, the fear, they would swallow you before sunset. Yet for those who lived it, this was simply the world as it was. They did not see themselves as trapped in history. They saw themselves as surviving it. Their lives, brief as they were, built the foundations of everything that came after. Every field they plowed, every stone they laid, every song they sang still echoes faintly in the stories we tell and the languages we speak. So as you let your eyes close and your thoughts drift back to your own time, take a slow breath. Feel the weight of the past ease from your shoulders. The fire burns low now, the village quiet once more. The stars stretch endlessly above the dark fields, just as they did centuries ago. And for a moment, it is easy to believe that time itself is only sleeping. If you've stayed with me through this journey, through mud and toil and moonlight, I thank you. And if you found yourself calmer, slower, and closer to sleep, then this journey through the medieval night has done its work. Before you drift away, remember to subscribe to History for Sleep, where each night the past comes alive not to frighten, but to soothe, to remind, to help you rest in the soft hum of history. Leave a comment below and tell me what you'd like to dream about next: ancient empires, forgotten worlds, or quiet lives from ages long gone. And tell me, too, when you listen, are these stories your night companions, or the soft voices that guide you into sleep? The night is deep now. The fire fades to embers. Somewhere far away, the church bell tolls one last time. Let it ring softly in your mind as you drift into rest, knowing that even in the hardest times of history, humanity always found a way to endure, to dream, and to survive. Good night, traveler. Sleep well in the echo of the past.